Right, so we saw in the previous video, as regarding the question of what Yishmael did wrong, that Rashi said he did the three cardinal sins of Arazara, Shvichut Damim, and Gilui Arayot, and he also claimed the birthright inheritance for himself and not for Yitzchak. Sadia Gaon said no, all he did wrong was that he mocked Yitzchak as being sort of weak and likely to get killed young, and Sadia added that these midrashim, which Rashi based himself on, these midrashim that Yishmael committed the three cardinal sins, cannot be correct, because why would God accept the prayers of such a bad person? We then notice that Radak makes an interesting comment. Radak observes how hard it was for Avram to send Yishmael away, and Radak says, look, first of all, it was hard because Avram was his father, and it's hard for any father to do that, but in particular, Radak adds, sort of pushing back against this whole narrative that Yishmael was being so terrible the way in what Sarah saw, that Avram felt like he could be straightened out, that in general Yishmael was headed in the right direction, because Yishmael grew up with him, meaning with Avraham, and Avram was trying to teach him the ways of God. And so it's both hard for Avraham to send him away because it's his son, but also looking back at whatever things Yishmael had done wrong, particularly if there were things like Sadia Gaon said, which aren't so bad, mocking Yitzchak as weak, maybe even, claiming the birthright, inheritance for himself for now. Avram felt these are things that Avram could educate him to improve from. And if Yishmael is already murdering people, it's harder to accept this interpretation. But again, assuming a more pshat-oriented interpretation here, Radak feels Avram is especially distraught because Avraham tries to teach everybody the ways of Hashem, and so he wants the chance to teach that to Yishmael rather than being forced to send Yishmael away. Let us continue now to the next thing that I asked you about on this sheet, which is, once Yishmael is out here in trouble, why is it that God accepts Yishmael's prayer? So there's a very important phrase here that I want everyone to be familiar with. We're told in the Psukim over here that God hears the voice of Yishmael. Yishmael Lokim at Kol Anar. So an angel calls out to Hagar and says, listen, don't be scared. God heard the young man's voice, Baasher Sham, the way that he is over there. And see how they translated in this English over here. Excuse me. Where he is, right? The way that he is right now. So what does it mean to hear the prayer where he is? Like, where else would God hear the prayer? Yishmael's in a certain place right now. If you just say that God heard Yishmael's voice, it's obvious that he heard Yishmael's voice in the place where Yishmael is. Like, where else would he have heard it? And so this phrase has inspired many comments by different Meforshim about the significance of saying that God heard Yishmael dafka where he is. So first we'll look at Rashi over here. Rashi gives two reasons why God specifically heard Yishmael's voice. First of all, Rashi tells us, Mikan tefillat hacholeh mitkabelet mitfilat acherim alav. You see that the prayer of a sick person is more accepted, mitkabelet, than the kabel, to accept or to receive, is more accepted than the prayer of others about him. So Rashi first of all tells us, why is it that Yishmael is the one whose prayer God is hearing? Why not hear Hagar's prayer? Right? Hagar also is distraught over the fact that her kid is sick. Why not hear her voice? So says Rashi, when the sick person himself calls out, who's calling out from the pain that he himself feels, that somehow resonates more with Hashem. Rashi then continues by zeroing in on this phrase, Baasher Sham, that God heard Yishmael. Because until now, Rashi just explained why Yishmael's prayer was more accepted. But why focus on Yishmael's prayer where he was at that time? So says Rashi, Lefi ma'asim shu achshav hu nidon, v'lo lefi ma shu atid la'asot. Very important phrase. Rashi says God judged him based on his actions right now. That's what nidon, like the word din, judgment. He is judged right now based on the actions of where he is now, achshav, and not from the future, not masha atid la'asot. So we may know that in the future, Yishmael and Yishmael's descendants are going to do all kinds of horrible things, but that doesn't count. When God's deciding right now whether or not to save Yishmael, he's judging Yishmael based on who Yishmael is in this time and place. So this is a very profound idea, a very important idea for understanding sort of divine justice and fairness in the world. It's not fair to judge someone because tomorrow he might do something bad. One of the Spider-Man movies has the whole thing about Hydra, right? This like evil organization that tries to present itself as not being so evil. They say, look, we came up with, this algorithm that tells us which people are likely to do bad things in the future, and so we're going to blow all those people to bits before they do it. And so that might involve killing a couple of million people, but it'll be good for the world because, the billion people who are left behind won't have those couple of million bad people to worry about. And, we don't accept such an approach of saying, let's see if we can find an algorithm for who are most likely to do bad things and kill them now. We believe that, God judges people Baasher Sham. He judges people based on what they're going to be like in the future. But, as Rashi said, Lo lefi ma she'atid la'asot, not based on what they might do in the future, but only what they're doing now. So if right now someone hasn't yet committed any crimes, you can't shoot the guy because tomorrow he might be prone to commit a crime then. And so even God, who knows the future and knows for sure that Yishmael or Yishmael's descendants will do bad things in the future, he doesn't have the right to kill Yishmael now in order to spare us from those bad things in the future. Along comes Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam. In English he's known as Rabbi Abraham Maimonides. Rambam only had one son. His name was Avraham. So Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam is part of this great Sephardic tradition that his father is known for. And, in Sephardic world, going back to Sadia Gaon that we spoke about last time, who lived in Egypt and later in Babylonia, through, centuries later, Jews in Spain, Jews throughout the Muslim world in the Middle Ages are very drawn to the idea that, of course, we respect what's said in the Midrash by Chazal, but it's okay to offer your own pshat interpretations about the simple meaning of the text, meaning something different. So it says Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam over here, our Chachamim have a well-known interpretation here. That's the interpretation that Rashi quoted, that Yishmael was judged by Baasher Sham, where he was at that time, based on his actions until then, and not based on what he'll do in the future. Says Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam, look, the Chachamim have that interpretation which is well known, but I'm going to tell you now something different. Pshatei Dekra, the simple pshat, the simple meaning of the scripture, the simple meaning of the pasuk is different. What does it mean, according to the simple pshat, that God judged Yishmael where he was? Sheibit Hashem yit'aleh b'matzavo, that God, may he be exalted, God looked in Yishmael's situation where he was, not his actions, not what sins he had done now versus sins he might do in the future, but just where he was. Where was he right then? He was in the wilderness dying of thirst. Tsa'aro asher hubo, the pain that he was in at that time. But makom asher bo azvao to'imo, the place where his mom had abandoned him. Tachat achal hasichim, that's a quote from the pasuk, right? Yishmael's mother had abandoned him under one of these trees or bushes in the wilderness. She left him there to die. So what it means that God saw him where he was, it's not like the focus, says Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam, shouldn't be on his actions, where he is spiritually, that God judged him as someone who's not yet that bad of a person religiously or morally. Rather, the focus should be that God judged him based on the particular predicament that he was in. He wasn't somebody in a comfortable home. Rather, Yishmael right now is somebody in a dire situation, dying of thirst in the wilderness. And God says, look, somebody like that, when I see a human being suffering like that, I feel bad for that human being. And so the simple pshat here has nothing to do with whether Yishmael will or won't sin in the future. The simple pshat is teaching us that God has mercy on people who are in dire situations like this. And so, just to sum up this point, if you think about it, in a way, Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam and Rashi aren't quite as far apart as we might think. Let's unify the font over here. So, what does it mean that God accepted Yishmael's prayer as is? So, one thing Rashi said, based on Chazal, is that future sins didn't count. But Rashi himself, remember, he gave two explanations. Rashi himself had also mentioned the idea, not so much focusing on the phrase Baasher Sham, but just focusing in general on the idea that God accepted Yishmael's prayer. Rashi himself had mentioned that Yishmael's prayer was accepted because he was sick at the time, and that's a particularly compelling prayer when the person himself is suffering chooses a prayer. So the truth is, Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam saying over here that God judged Yishmael based on his dire situation is basically that same idea. The difference is that Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam is reading that into the phrase Baasher hu Sham. He's saying that basically is the only idea in the pasuk, right? That God heard the voice of Yishmael because Yishmael was sick and was suffering, like Rashi said. And according to Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam, that also is what's meant by the phrase Baasher hu Sham. That situation in which Yishmael is in, when he's sick from thirst and dying of thirst, that's the situation in which God chose to hear his prayer. And so the focus then is on God's mercy for someone in a dire situation, whereas according to that known parish of Chazal, that parish that Rashi quotes, that Yishmael was judged by his current behavior and not his future sins, the other focus is much more on this sort of philosophical idea that even though God knows the future, he only holds us accountable for right now based on what we've done up to this point, and not based on what he knows we might do in the future.